Hello, welcome to the Trudy Haynes Show. I'm Trudy, and today we're going to take you among the stars, and those heavenly bodies have a message for you, which is going to be delivered by our astrologer, Shemaiah Bay, with good tidings. And we're also going to take you on the battlefield at Fort Mifflin, and Kathy Lee, our historian with her hidden footprints, is going to reveal what happened with the Emancipation Proclamation. She was right in the middle of it. And I had the privilege of going one-on-one with our Philadelphia Police Commissioner, Charles Ramsey. You're also going to find out something about him, too, that you didn't know.
Philadelphia, America is at war, a civil war. Welcome to Hidden Footprints. We are celebrating the 150th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation that opened the doors for men of color to take arms to fight for their freedom.
Harriet Tubman, known to the Union soldiers as General Tubman. Now, I figure in this life I'm owed two things, either death or freedom. If I can't have one, I'll have the other. Harriet Tubman, Union spy, scout, and nurse, was that Harriet Tubman.
You were a spy.
Yes, I was a spy, so I'm here to let the soldiers know exactly what I did when I was down in Charleston. But there's a lot of spying down in the Confederates. So I come back up here and tell the soldiers exactly what I did. Now, see, the Union Army wanted me to spy on the Confederates. So I went down to Charleston on the Combahee River, spied on the Confederates. Saw where they were hiding the big cannon guns. They had the tents, the horses, and the bridge. So I told Colonel Montgomery exactly what. We went on back there. We snuffed out the big guns. We let the horses go. We burned the bridge so they couldn't escape. Then we fought them one-on-one. And that was a nice battle. Nobody got hurt. Nobody got wounded. So I was one of the first women folk to lead men folk in the battle. So I come up here to tell the soldiers the same thing. They want to know how my spy mission went. So I told them, I didn't do this all by myself. When I went down there, I went to the plantation. I had all my spies and scouts to go out, and I said, if you hear anything, freak out about the Confederates, report back to me. That's how I know about the Confederates putting all the mines in the water. So we went in the boat. I could spot out the mines and tell them where to hit it. So I had a lot of spies working for me and scouts. Harriet Tubman wasn't scared of nothing. She wasn't scared of nobody neither. She didn't come in this world to be no slave, and she didn't stay one neither. No, sir. Early one morning, she stole away. She ran through the forest, through the swamps, hound dogs on the trail. But she ran until she got to freedom. But she didn't stop there. She went back over 19 times and brought well over 500 with her to Freedom Land. $40,000 on her head, dead or alive. But that old Harriet Tubman was too clever. She never did take the same route twice. They never did collect on that reward money. Harriet Tubman, braver than brave. Harriet Tubman, ice water running through her veins was that Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman was known to the soldiers as General Tubman. Harriet Tubman, known to the abolitionists as the Prophet.
I hope that you enjoyed the first installment or just a little glimpse into the 150th anniversary celebration of the Emancipation Proclamation and its importance to American history then and now. See you next time on Hidden Footprints when we continue this story.
This is Shemaiah Bay, reporting for the Trudy Haynes Show. I've been asked to talk about the planet Saturn. That's right, the planet Saturn happens to be going through, or is visible within our, from our geo perspective, our Earth-centered perspective. Been asked to be, report about that because it's visible during a clear night. So what is the planet Saturn? Planet Saturn astrologically. First, let's do some definitions. What is astrology? Astrology is the way the planetary bodies influence humanity. If you didn't hear that correctly, it's the way the planetary bodies influence humanity. Most of us are familiar with two major luminaries. Can't deny them because they're very visible. The sun, number one, and the moon, number two at night. So dealing with the planet Saturn astrologically, Saturn is known as the god Kronos, not the god that we worship, but It's also in Greek mythology, the god Kronos. Kronos, if you don't know, means time. Astrologically, what does that do? Saturn also rules the zodiac sign of Capricorn. Capricorn, the key word for Capricorn is I use. So Saturn, the energy or the behavior rules old relationships, old friendships, also deals with not relatives, but more like landlords, elders, father figures. And what does Saturn, the planet Saturn, want us to do? Planet Saturn wants us to be stable and to be secure. The planet Saturn at the moment happens to be in the sign of Scorpio. Scorpio, for all those Scorpios out there, it's all about control, concealing things, secrets, and it's also about the libido and sexuality. So right now we're going through, at this particular time of the taping, we're dealing with a Saturn-Sun opposition. So what does that mean? An opposition means to do something differently. So until next time, this is Shemaiah Bey reporting on the Trudy Haynes Show, and we're talking about the planet Saturn in the sign of Scorpio is making an opposition to the Sun and Taurus. If you want to hear more, stay tuned. Shemaiah Bey on the Trudy Haynes Show.
Right now in this city, what you feel is the most urgent thing that you have to do in your position?
I think continue to drive the crime numbers down, violent crime in particular. We have far too many shootings, far too many homicides. We've made some inroads and had some progress. For example, last year, we finished a year with the lowest number of shootings since 2000, yet our homicides were up slightly. Mm-hmm. And the reason the homicides were up slightly is because we had people shot multiple times. We had a 30% increase in the number of people shot multiple times. So the mortality rate was high. Still, 331 people, far too many people to be murdered on the streets of our city. And we've got to continue to do everything we can to get violent crime down in our city. But at the same time, don't ignore property crime because, you know, burglary, theft from auto, these are crimes that really affect an awful lot of people and give people a sense of safety, of a lack of safety and security in the community.
Now, you talk a lot about things that we can do to prevent crime. What are some of those things? 1, 2, 3.
Well, I think that the main thing is education. I think that by really focusing on education, giving kids a chance to be able to compete in the real world and support themselves and their families is probably the best way to prevent crime. There aren't too many people with master's degrees standing on the corner selling crack. So, you know, we've really got to focus on education, I believe.
But we're closing schools.
Well, you can still get a good education with fewer schools. It's the quality of the education going on inside the building that really makes the difference. I mean,
you're talking about putting police in the schools.
Well, police are already in the schools. I mean, we have 78 officers that are assigned right now to schools throughout our city. And we've got a chief inspector that is an overall charge of coordinating security for the schools.
So let me stop you right there, sir. Does that mean there's going to be an increase in schools, more guns in the schools between the teachers and the authorities and the police?
Well, I'm not aware of teachers being able to be armed, and I hope that's not the case. I mean, you need trained professionals, but the reality is that kids can learn and only learn, in my opinion, in a safe, secure environment. And if it takes that until we establish that security, then as far as I'm concerned, that's just the way it is. I think we don't need to be intrusive as far as a police officer, but we need to be available should something occur in that school. I went through high school back in the 1960s. There was a school officer in my school then in Chicago, Officer Davis. I remember him to this day. And he was a guy that everybody got to know. He worked very, very well there in the school environment. He wasn't abusive toward any of the kids. When I was a young policeman in Chicago, I worked as a part-time job. I had security in a high school on the west side of the city.
Was your gun always noticeable?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I worked in uniform sometimes plain clothes. But I got to know the kids. I also coached basketball part-time in the summer league and so forth because I really got into the school and really got into the all the things that were going on and made a lot of friends there and a lot of young people. And many of them came on the job and became police officers in Chicago. I don't know if I had anything to do with that, but I'd like to think that perhaps that's the case. So depends. I think it's very important that we have the right kind of police officer assigned to schools. And it has to be somebody who's patient, someone who doesn't have any kind of animosity toward young people, someone who's willing to work with youngsters. But I think he could be a very positive role model.
Now, you're working towards that, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Well, we have 78 officers now assigned to various schools in our city, high schools, junior highs, and so forth. That number will remain pretty much stable. Even with the school closures, there's no need for us to really reduce that number. We may need to add an extra person at a particular school. We're in the process now of doing a thorough assessment of security needs in light of school closings and safe corridors that need to be established so kids can get to and from safely, as well as any kind of issues that may come up inside the school
And
itself.
these officers would be selected according to some of the classifications that you want them in.
Yes, you know, and there's a program now that the federal government has and has had for a while, school resource officers, where there is very specific training that's provided to police officers who are going to be working in a school environment. We don't want to interfere with administrative issues that go on in a school. You know, kids, you know, cutting class or being slightly disruptive, but not, you know, assaultive or anything like that. Let the school handle that sort of thing. If there's an actual crime committed, obviously we have to step in. But for the most part, most of the incidents are things that happen in a school, kids being kids. They could be serious, could result in a suspension of some kind, but it's not criminal. And we let the school handle that. But we can be there to help establish a safe environment for kids to learn so that we don't have gang members coming in schools, being disruptive. We don't have weapons coming into school, potentially causing harm. We don't have kids assaulting teachers or teachers assaulting kids. I mean, you know, we can maintain a stable, safe environment, and I think that's important.
How can we help? How can the public help you with some of these problems?
Well, parents can help by being parents. I mean, part of the problem that we face, not only in Philadelphia but elsewhere, households where parents aren't really parenting in terms of really keeping up with their kids and doing the things they need to guide, keep them on the straight and narrow.
Can you help? So can we help you?
Excuse me.
That's all right. Can we help in some way? Are there courses that we can be taking? Are there meetings that we could be going to train? Maybe we need the training also.
Well, there are private service providers that can provide some support to families. You can do it through their church. I don't know if they can do it through their schools or not. We don't offer it specifically in the police department, but maybe that's something we ought to think about as well, is being able to at least bring the right people together to provide the kind of support that would be useful for parents that are having trouble with their children. I mean, you've
And
got
they
people
are.
that are working.
Yes.
You've got families where maybe the parent is absent and a grandparent is trying to raise a child, and they've gotten to an age where they can't keep up with a 14, 15, 16-year-old. I mean, so you got a lot of different situations, and people do need assistance. They do need help.
So that might be something you could look into. What about drugs? Now, that's a big issue
Well,
all over the country.
drugs continue to be an issue. Drugs drive a lot of our crime, property crime, violent crime, robberies, and the like. But again, the best way to deal with the drug problem is through treatment and prevention. That doesn't mean that you go soft on enforcement. You have to deal with the enforcement component. But long-term, treatment and prevention is really the best way to deal with the drug problem. There was a time when nobody thought we'd ever get people to wear seatbelts in cars. And I remember when they made cars and seatbelts were actually extra equipment. You had to pay extra money just to get a seatbelt in a car. Now,
It's
people
mandatory.
buckle up. Why? Because of the educational component that went along with that. It wasn't just a law, it was the education, why it's best to wear a seatbelt, how a seatbelt can help save your life. Well, if we do the same thing around drugs and continue to do that and press that home, is it going to stop everybody from using drugs? No. But I think it'll stop an awful lot of people if they understand the dangers. And it's not just drugs, it's alcohol too. I mean, you look at the Steubenville, Ohio situation with the two young boys for raping the 16-year-old girl, alcohol being introduced, and the dangers of that. I hope young people, especially athletes who kind of somehow think they're privileged and are treated in a privileged way in many communities, look at that and pay
Realize
attention and realize that their whole lives can change because of something like that.
Stupidity. Now, what about the, well, I'm really concerned about guns in the school because I didn't have them when I went to school, and you didn't have much of that either. But training people, and you talk a lot about education. Are our churches keeping up with you? Are they really coming to you and looking for ways that they can help? Because we all just about go to church,
Well,
whether we're very religious or not. And I feel that sometimes the churches have let us down.
well, part of the problem, I think, and we do work with the clergy. Not every church pastor
understand.
is, willing to work with us or steps out there, but there are quite a few that do. Unfortunately, there are also a lot of people who don't go to church, and the church has limited influence. So we have to not only deal with the church, we got to deal with other areas as well to try to reach as many people as possible. A lot has to be done through recreation, Parks and Rec, PAL centers, things of that nature.
Glad
Not
you said
everyone's
that.
athletic, so they don't necessarily do that. Well, maybe, the clergy can pick up in some areas. Maybe it's something else that they're interested in, whatever that might be. But we have to just not look at one thing. We have to really take as broad a look as possible at what young people are being influenced by. One of the things that we've done is we've reached out to the hip-hop community. Kids listen to hip-hop. They listen to hip-hop stations. And oftentimes I'll do a little something on one of those radio stations whenever we have a particular issue. Take you back to flash mobs a couple of years ago when we had people engaging in that kind of activity, young people. We went to a lot of these stations and we were able to put out messages, and the DJs actually put out messages telling people it's not cool, it's actually stupid to get involved in this sort of thing. Don't do it.
Goes back to the old James Brown kind of.
Yeah, I mean, so you gotta, what are they listening to? What are they doing? Social media. We're very aggressive now, and not only monitoring social media, but also trying to get messages out across social media. Young people don't want you calling them on the phone. They want to get a text message. It's a whole different era. My son is 26 years old, and if I call him on the phone, he'll say, "Dad, why are you calling? Just send me a message." I mean, because that's his generation, and that's the way they prefer to communicate. So we have to be flexible. We have to be able to reach people in a variety of different ways if we want to be effective. The church is certainly a part of that, but it's not the only solution, because in a lot of these churches now, their congregations no longer live in that same neighborhood where the church is located.
That's true.
They're coming in from suburban areas and over in Jersey or Delaware or whatever. They still go to that church, but they do not live in that neighborhood. So the influence that it once had, where the church you went to, you actually lived in that community,
That's true.
a lot of that has changed.
How about phone? There's a movement now to kill phones while driving. No
Yeah.
phone uses. What do you think about that?
I think people shouldn't be distracted when they're driving. That's the issue I have, is driving while distracted. Because I've seen just far too many accidents, and you see people driving down the street and they're looking down, trying to text or dial a phone or whatever, and they say that trying to text while driving is equivalent of closing your eyes for 5 seconds while you're driving. Now, you wouldn't be driving on the expressway on 76, close your eyes for 5 seconds, and then open them up again to see what's going on around you.
Yeah.
Well, that makes about as much sense as texting while you're driving, because you're taking your eyes off of the road. You're looking down at a keyboard, then you look up and things are happening in just a split second.
So if that becomes a possible bill, you would support that?
Oh, absolutely, I would. I think that driving needs your full time and attention. You don't need a whole lot of distractions. And a lot of people drove for years and years and years and did not have telephones in cars. You just had to
Television
wait to
car.
catch whomever whenever they got to where they were going. All this stuff that, I got to talk to you right now. I got to send you a message back right now. We live in a world where nobody can wait for anything. But there are some things that I think you need to wait for. And if you don't care about your own safety, you should care about those around you, because you can cause someone else to lose their life because you're doing something that's taking your attention away from the roadway.
Raising the drinking age.
I personally think 21 is fine. I mean, 21 it's been around for forever. I don't know if I would not be in favor of lowering the age. I remember back in the 70s,
Yeah,
some
it's been that long.
states lowered it to 18, and that was during Vietnam when the whole argument was I can go to war but I can't buy a drink. They wound up raising it again because of the problems that were created with 18-year-olds drinking. Again, education about alcohol drinking is something that needs to be a part of it. It's not just an age thing. 21 to me is still very young, but I also think it's adulthood, and you're old enough to make your own choices and your own decisions. Raising the age, I don't see where that's going to cause anything.
I shouldn't say this, but I noticed that I might get in trouble for this one, but some of your staff, not your staff here in the office, but I mean some of the police, are a little overweight.
Well,
You have a
they should be.
program?
No, we don't. And if we did, we'd have to work it out through the union in order to do that sort of thing. A person's health is very important. We do have a wellness program through the city. My Active Health is what it's called. And there's incentives if you, lose weight, better control your diabetes if you have it, and all that sort of thing, where you get a little reduction on the premium, your health premium that you're paying. They give you a little slight reduction. Every year we have, through Weight Watchers, a competition between the police department and the fire department on which agency loses the most weight. Last year the police won. The last few years before that, I think fire did. And we'll do it again this year. But it's all voluntary, and it's all things that we certainly encourage our officers that are on the street, especially that are out here chasing folks and doing the things they do. But it's a job that also, is very stressful at times. That can also cause some issues in terms of people eating, but also the hours we work. We're rotating between days and 4 to 12, sometimes last out or midnight shift. They work in some areas of the city where, quite frankly, fine restaurants are not in abundance. So the only thing you've got is McDonald's or Burger King or Popeyes or something like that. So the eating habits tend to be rather poor in many of those areas because there's nothing to choose from. So there are a lot of reasons, I think, over time why that happens, plus just age and the fact that your metabolism can change. But certainly it's something that we want our officers to be healthy. And that's the main thing. It's not as much about weight as it is health. You got some healthy, overweight folks, and you got some sickly, skinny people. So it's more about health and taking care of yourself so that you don't have any unnecessary illnesses that you could avoid.
I think I understand why you're so popular. You take into consideration everyone. That's very good.
Well, popularity is kind of a funny thing, a very fragile thing. Somebody like you one minute and not like you so much the next. So you just have to try to do what's right and deal with it. Doesn't mean you always get it right, but you try to do in your heart what you think is in the best interest of the department and the city.
Are you happy here?
I am, very much so. Philly reminds me of Chicago. It doesn't remind me of Washington so much. There are a few of the crime problems that are similar. But I had the honor of living in 3 different great cities. Chicago, I'm a native Chicagoan. Both my parents were born and raised in Chicago. And, of course, Washington, D.C., and now Philadelphia. People ask me to compare Philly and Washington all the time, but it's hard to compare because D.C. is a very different city because of the heavy federal presence. The issues in police that you get involved in as a local police chief that most local chiefs don't get involved in. Philly does remind me a great deal of Chicago, just a smaller scale because it's a smaller city than Chicago, but it does remind me. City and neighborhoods, people who really, go overboard in terms of the love of sports teams. Chicago's the same way. The urban problems are very similar. Chicago has a more severe gang problem. However, we have our share of problems with young people getting involved in that kind of activity as well. So it does remind me of my hometown. That's why I think I was so comfortable coming here.
Anyone else in your family in your profession?
No. Well, my son now, he is a juvenile probation officer. But prior to that, no, I'm the only one that took on law enforcement as a career, and that was by accident. I didn't grow up wanting to be a police officer. I just kind of accidentally became a police officer.
You and me both. Nice knowing you.
Thank you.
So sorry, we have to go now. But remember to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to us on YouTube, and watch us on lifeandspiritonline.com every Saturday morning at 9:30 a.m. And soon we'll be webcasting. Just remember that a smile is a smile in any language. Have a good day.